Hi, I'm EllenMcMahon. This is a screencast on an SEN case study based on my research during my 8-week school placement. The special educational need I focused on is autism. Within this screencast, I will highlight key areas of learning associated with this learning difficulty. I've supported this case study by gathering evidence across Stephen Brookfield's 4 lenses. Before I begin, this is just a rundown on the general profile of the school. The school I worked in was a vocational school situated in a rural town of Ireland. The scheme I set out to do with this group was printmaking. The special educational need in focus is autism. Autism is characterised as a mental condition which carries great difficulty in communicating, forming relationships with others, in using language, and forming abstract concepts. According to the NCSE, these are just some of the behavioural challenges individuals with autism face. Their difficulties with social interaction may manifest in the following ways. Impaired communication is characterised by these key points. I've gathered many research-based strategies. The main websites I've used are National Council for Special Education, Autism Alliance, Autism Awareness Centre, National Council for Autistic Society, and teachingcommunity.com. These are the overlapping teaching strategies highlighted to support learners with autism. While gathering evidence to support differentiation, I also spoke to my cooperating art teacher about the general strengths, needs, and interests of the student. These are the key aspects of the student's strengths. As art is mainly a visual subject, my cooperating art teacher expressed that the student's strengths were working visually, which stemmed into art, craft, and design. I also had a conversation with the student's SNA. She gave me advice on some of the student's weaknesses in class. Questioning and answering verbally was a key area the student really struggled with. The student also had severe communication challenges and had difficulty with social interaction with both teachers and classmates. After these conversations, I set out targets that I implemented into the classroom environment to support the student. The general targets I put in place were building on the student's sense of achievement by praise. I also implemented frequently pair and group work during my lessons for the student to develop socially with his peer group. Upon discussing the student with the learning support teacher, she gave me further advice on suggested differentiation strategies tailored to the student's individual needs based on his individual education plan and educational history. These were priority recommendations and targets for the junior cycle subject area. Highlighted here on the right is an excerpt from a discussion with her. I also had an informal interview with the student's SNA. Here, I asked questions on the particular supports needed, behavioural issues, the general learning of the student, and his enthusiasm to art class in general. She highlighted an important issue she faces when given the student support in class. When using equipment or operating machinery, due to social impairments, the student needs to be watched and guided at all times. The student tends to zone out, and this could be potentially very dangerous when working with lino cutting tools if not safeguarded. The student's safety was a priority at all times. For this scheme, I'll run through the differentiation I used during all 4 stages of my scheme. During the research stage, I took the class group on an excursion to commence on-site drawing, focusing on the buildings, bridge and river of their local town in order to base a lino print design from. These were the drawings the student produced. Before the excursion, I gave the student a further one-to-one demonstration on drawing thumbnails. For this activity, I also drew out thumbnail boxes for the student and wrote thumbnails above the page so the student could connect the word to a visual image. While on site, after I got the whole group set up for the activity, I scaffolded the student by asking him lower level questioning. I asked him to draw and look at the simple shapes the building made and to replicate these on his page in the thumbnail boxes. For For the initial ideas phase of the scheme, I was more aware of how the student worked in the class. The students' drawing levels were of good standard for this year group. However, the student had difficulty processing information during whole class group demonstrations and questioning sessions. After my initial group demonstration, I implemented and planned out for one-to-one demonstrations with the student as the groups got set up for the activity. During this, I asked lower level questioning and asked the student to demonstrate his understanding by showing me how to do a task. When looking at critical and contextual work, I also provided the student with this word search. The word search highlighted the artists I was using as a reference to printmaking. For this activity, I got the student to work together with a peer. This worked on developing literary skills and implementing strategies to develop social skills. For this stage of the scheme, I scaffolded the learner by breaking down the steps after initial group demonstration. Here, I applied a border to each page of the student's final design. I also asked the student to write the sequence of steps down on his design sheets. I used lower level questioning for this stage of the scheme. During this stage, I asked a classmate to further explain the steps to the student that needed to be done to improve social communication. During critical and contextual stage of the scheme, I paired the student with a peer that would support learning for both. This was an example of the team worksheet used during this phase. I used Think, Pair, Share for this activity. I found this very beneficial to the student as he improved social skills, literacy, and by working with a pair, improved on communication. During this stage, the student cut, print, and produced a lino print. After my initial demonstrations, which highlighted all the printmaking steps in sequence, I provided additional demonstrations for the student that focused on breaking up the steps throughout my lesson, so the steps were clear and simplified for the student. I asked the student to do these steps alongside me, as I printed my own print. During each demonstration, as the student has auditory processing delay, I slowed down my language and questioned the student so he had a clear understanding of the breakdown. This is a completed worksheet by the student. As the student worked well with writing steps down in sequence, I used this sheet as a tool for learning for him to describe each tool and what it was used for, and in sequence, how he used them. This is a sample extract from the differentiation stage of my lesson plan. On the left is a sample of the lino cutting by the student. While the student cut lino, I checked in on him frequently, as he tends to zone out. During this activity, he was also supported by his SNA. This is just an example of the student's first colour print while he printed. I printed alongside him. This was to differentiate the lino process and to simplify the steps for him by showing him visually how to do a task. This is the final print the student created. On the left is his 3-colour print, and on the right is a black and white print. On completion of the work, I asked students to assess work. This task centred around the students building their own success criteria as a group. Under this framework, they scored their work and discussed their work with the whole group. I selected 4 students to discuss work, the student in focus being one of them, the students I selected. To further build on social and communication skills, I asked the student in focus lower level questioning to discuss his work. He pointed out the simple elements that were in his final print, such as the bridge, the buildings, and the river, and gave a breakdown of the colours he used. I found his class group very supportive of the student during this activity and enhanced his social and communication skills to the wider group. Thank you for listening to the case study screencast. I've also included appendices, list of figures, and references used during this screencast. Thank you.